So I shall talk for a while and then give you an opportunity to ask any questions you may have or discuss anything you're interested in discussing or teach me something. Yeah, why not? So here's a question. Why is it sometimes really smart people do stupid things? Yeah. And this can lead into a very interesting investigation of what it means to be smart, what it means to be intelligent. In the West, one of the kind of buzzwords over the past few years has been growth mindset. Have you heard this word? This like growth mindset. And it's one of those fancy coinages that actually say something so basic and banal that as Buddhists don't even have a special word for it. But what does it mean? It means that the mind can change. The mind and one's intelligence is not a fixed quota. Nothing is fixed, nothing is stable. And that's basically what growth mindset is about. So intelligence is not a fixed quality. Indeed, there are no fixed qualities. My favorite analogy for this idea comes from language. And in language, English language, most languages, certain conventions of the subject, the verb, the object, adjectives, adverbs, and so on and so forth. My first reflection on this came through reading my very first Buddhist book, The Way of Zen by Alan Watts. And he said in the phrase, "It is raining," what does the word "it" refers to? What does it refer to? So we have certain conventions in language that are very useful, but don't necessarily reflect the way things are. And looking at the body and mind, we assume that there is a noun here. Me, I, this person here. What the Buddha is saying is there are no nouns. Okay? So even the nouns are verbs. So the body is a verb. The mind is a verb. It's not a thing that you can discover. You know, the mind, the original mind, or whatever kind of mind. The mind is a verb. So you could say a body stream, a mind stream. So this is key to understanding the Buddha's teachings on the nature of human life. And if we start to look at experience directly, this immediately goes from what might seem kind of an interesting philosophical idea to common sense, what's obvious, clearly presents itself to our inquiry. With the moment that we put down our thoughts and imagination, memory, focus on the inhalation, the exhalation, in-breath, out-breath. We have no sense at that moment, do we, of being a person with this name, this gender, of this background, this personality, this past, these hopes, these expectations. They're simply the breath coming in, the breath coming out. There are feelings, perceptions, sankharas, sense consciousness. We're face to face with the real world of the five khandhas. These are words and summaries, but they relate directly to our experience. So many of the things we take as the basic premises on which we conduct our life and our relationships are so flimsy, so wispy and insubstantial that all you need to do is turn your mind to your in-breath and your out-breath and they disappear, just like that. So we see the arising and passing away of feelings, thoughts, perceptions. This is what our real world consists of. It's what you can know as a direct experience. And we, in the light of that experience, this statement that there's no nouns, there's no verbs, it's to say, it's not like that's an interesting idea. It's, oh yeah, of course. There's nothing stable. There's no stable, independent entity to be found anywhere in our experience. So then what does it mean to be a smart person? Returning to my original question. If we're looking at our real world of experience, we can maybe observe that there are moments of intelligence or smartness arising and passing away. So maybe we could say one definition of a smart person would be someone who experiences many smart moments during a day. But because those smart moments arise and pass away, it's quite possible that there are stupid moments arising and passing away in the very same mind. Why not? Why is the occasional or intermittent or even frequent smart moments, smart thoughts, intelligent perceptions and insights, why are they any more who you are than any other verb that arises, passes away? So looking again on the more kind of conventional level, we see that people are very smart in certain areas of their life and quite stupid in other areas of their life. Smartness and stupidity are not mutually exclusive, or they are only in the sense that they can't arise at the same moment. So what does it mean to be a Buddhist? You come to your breath coming in, your breath coming out. Can you discover your Buddhist identity? Well, it depends really on again, how we would define that, doesn't it? So if we define being a Buddhist in terms of the quality of our awareness, the mindfulness, then we could say, yeah, we are Buddhists on many occasions during the day. We have many Buddhist moments in our life. And so maybe we could say a Buddhist is someone who's trying to increase the amount of Buddhist moments in their life. To have more Buddhist moments in my life. This is my my intention and my goal in my spiritual life. Yeah, that's actually quite a good way of looking at it, isn't it? So not in terms of some external badge or affiliation, but in the real world of here and now, your body and mind. So let's look at another question or another issue which is kind of related to this, or this way of looking at things. And it's how we deal with stupid moments in the past which have led to stupid behavior, harmful behavior. So I think there's a useful distinction to be made between shame and guilt. So these words are defined differently by different people, admittedly. But my understanding of guilt is expressed in such sentiments as, I'm such a bad person. Why? I did all these terrible things. So that's a pretty heavy burden to carry around, isn't it? This feeling, I'm bad. I have this quality of badness. I'm defined by this quality of badness. It's so central to who I am that I can call myself a bad person. That is quite a sophisticated philosophical position that many people adopt without realizing it to be so. So how is that different from shame? So in the Buddhist sense, shame is acknowledging I did a really stupid thing, or I said a really stupid thing, a really harmful thing. Can you see the difference? With guilt, there is the creation of this noun, the bad person, who is defined by the bad action. With shame, there is the acknowledgement, honest acknowledgement that something harmful or stupid occurred. We take full responsibility for it, but there is no creation of an owner of that bad action. There is responsibility without ownership. Again, that's, if you were to propose that as some kind of philosophy, you'd probably have a lot of people argue against it. But if you were to look at how things occur in your real world, your real inner world, I think you say, yeah, that's actually what happens. So let's say you did a stupid or a harmful thing in the past, and you inquire, why did I do that? And maybe some people would say it was Satan, or I was, some kind of spirit took over me, or some satanic, malevolent force. I'm actually a very innocent, kind person, but that's not who I really am. You know how many people say that, don't they? They say, I did it, but it's not who I really am. I'm really somebody much better than that. But the Buddhist analysis is, well, on that occasion, there was this much mindfulness, this much patience, this much awareness, and this much anger, and this much conceit, and this much greed. And it's not surprising, is it? If the amount of mindfulness and awareness and patience is so weak, and the opposing forces of greed and hatred and delusion are so strong, that at a crisis, the stronger force will prevail. It's as simple as that. And so, reviewing actions in the past through this framework, then you don't feel you're cursed by this forever, that you're this kind of person and you're going to be this kind of person for the rest of your life. Your analysis is in my, that's the way people in the world may talk, but we're Buddhists, we're looking at the real world of experience, and our conclusion is that if I don't want that to happen again, I have to be very systematic, consistent, and committed in reducing the strength of the greed, the hatred, and the delusion, and increasing the power of the positive, wholesome qualities of mindfulness and compassion and patience and so on. So it's not something that's incredibly opaque or mystical. It's common sense, if you like someone using this word with me. This is my idea of common sense. Yeah, if you've cultivated anger all your life, or for many lives, and you've never seriously contemplated metta, then how could it be any other way at that time? So this is the forgiveness for yourself. It's not forgiveness that actually you're a bad person, but I'm not going to hold it against you. That's not what forgiveness is about. Forgiveness is saying you understand the web of causes and conditions that contributed to that event. And you're able to tease them apart and to devise a strategy and implement a strategy to minimize the likelihood that that's going to happen in the future. It's as simple as that, really. But of course, it's not so simple in maintaining that kind of commitment. So there's no need to create this idea of a person on top. And in Western culture, guilt is carried around almost like as a badge of honor. Someone is considered to be, to have integrity when they feel guilty about things. And even when they feel guilty about things or they have no control, it's just generally seen as a positive mental trait. If you observe whether it's in movies or novels, or if the author, the scriptwriter wants to indicate to you that this is a good person that you can identify with, and then they have their hero or heroine express some guilt about something. So that means it's a good person. As a Buddhist, we think, what a fool. So looking in this momentary way, this sense of flow of conditions, again, blame. Who's to blame? What a foolish question. It's like, well, if you don't blame the perpetrator, then you're blaming the victim. It's like a black and white, two choices. You either blame the perpetrator or you blame the victim. But as Buddhists, we are mapping out the causes and conditions that allowed that to happen. And so yes, the chief actor and the person who instigated something is primarily responsible. But we're not apportioning blame. We are mapping out the causes and conditions. It's a very different approach. And I would argue that it's a far wiser way to anticipate, to prevent, and to deal with harmful behavior. So we've got all these things arising, passing away, causes and conditions. And this is what we're interested. This is how wisdom grows. This is how your inner wisdom park starts to flourish. You start to learn to look at things and examine things and inquire into things. And the formal meditation practice is where you develop a stability of mind. This is where you get your foundation. So you're developing a lot of important life skills in formal meditation, and then you're applying them in daily life. So a lot of these reflections, wisdom, wise reflections, take place outside of formal practice, but you're creating the maturity of mind and the readiness of mind to learn from experience. So this is the key point here, I think, and something I was mentioning today. I believe we become most fully human when we're learning. Learning is the characteristic, the salient characteristic of the human condition, or what makes the human condition unique. We're learners. We can learn. We can change. There's nothing fixed. So all the great teachers say everything around us, form, sound, smell, everything is teaching us. But the question is, are we ready to learn from our teachers? And this is the value, and one of the values of the formal meditation practice. It's creating within us both the stability to maintain awareness throughout different conditions, and also the sensitivity to, in particular, the three characteristics. And as you're present to experience more and more, then this bubbles up within you, these insights and these paths of reflection. They just arise more and more naturally. You become more fluent. So I'll give you an example of something that came up in a few days ago, just in my daily life. I was reflecting on beauty. Let's say human beauty. So we have all the, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Asubha Kammatthana teachings of looking at the unattractive aspects of the human body in order to reduce or remove lust when it's an obstacle to growth in Dhamma. So there are many different ways of proceeding with that. I think one of the problems is that underlying this, often people start off with this idea, this body is actually beautiful, but as a Buddhist I've got to try and sort of find a way of looking at it as unbeautiful. It's like the default is the beauty, and the asubha is a kind of an overlay, as a sort of a thing like a virtuous meditator should be able to do. But which is not the case, okay? But the reflection mechanism is, let's say, for example, that you were to take photographs. So let's say a beautiful woman or a handsome man, and you start with like a photograph right up against the pores of the skin. And then you take another photograph from 5 centimeters, and then 10 centimeters, and then 15 centimeters, and then 20 centimeters, and 25, all the way to like 300 meters. So all those thousands of photographs of the beautiful or the handsome face, how many of them would you think, oh, that's really beautiful, or that's really handsome? So what's the advantage, or why would you do that? Well, the insight here is that what we call beauty is dependent on certain quite closely defined conditions. You have to be a certain distance from a human face to find it attractive. Even the most attractive woman or attractive, handsome man in the world, you have to be at least so many centimeters away from that face to find it attractive, and then after a certain distance, it's going to become less and less attractive. It's going to become more and more kind of like a default face, and then it's just become a blur. And then it's not beautiful at all. So this is the momentariness and the conditioned, contingent nature of human beauty. Of course, without saying, you need to have the lights on, or you need to be, otherwise you won't be able to see it at all. But if you can see it, you have to see it with certain lighting conditions, at a certain distance, no closer than this, closer. So this is not saying this body is actually ugly and disgusting, but it's saying just what is this thing we call beauty? How flimsy it is, and how conditioned it is. So here we're using the insights from anicca and anatta to change our perception of human beauty. So we can have, as the mind is dwelling in the present moment more and more and interested in our experience and learning from experience, these are kinds of things that just can bubble up in your mind. And a lot of practice is observation. And this is where there is a kind of a link with scientific method, and we're trying to observe. So what is it that, more than anything else, prevents us from observing phenomena clearly? I think my answer would be like and dislike. And so here we can see the importance of samadhi. And what exactly is samadhi? Samadhi is an unbroken stream of mindfulness. So some people say, I just quite a good samadhi, but maybe not so good mindfulness. No, this is what samadhi is made out of. It's the essence of samadhi is mindfulness. And often when we speak about samadhi, then the peaceful dimension of samadhi is given most attention. We talk about the peaceful mind. But that's a kind of, I think, can be quite a dangerous way of thinking about samadhi. Particularly if you've never experienced samadhi before, the tendency is to confuse peace with relaxation. And so if you start to meditate, and quite difficult to begin with, a lot of stray thoughts and agitation in the mind, And then the amount of the intensity and the frequency of distracting thoughts starts to diminish, and sense of relaxation. And here the mistake is to assume that this is peace, and with that there's a relaxation of mindfulness. And this is why so many meditators will get drowsy at this point, because they're assuming that they've realized some peace. They haven't. And it's not the point anyway. The point is the unbroken stream of awareness of mindfulness. And in the Thai translation of samadhi, the word that is used is kwam tang jai man, which means stability of mind. So the mind is firmly established, it's stable. So it's stable mindfulness. So as the mindfulness develops, then there are certain changes take place. And there's a joy in the mind, a feeling of happiness, well-being, intense well-being, peace, but the defining feature is that stability of mind. And the stability of mind plays this role in eliminating the movement towards, movement away from phenomena. So that tendency is so deeply embedded in our minds. And it's there's a spectrum going from the very coarse, I want that, I like that, give it to me, and go away, I don't need this in my life right now. So that's a kind of the coarsest version. But as you look more closely in your mind, you can see sometimes there's just like a pulse in the mind, just a movement, very subtle movement towards something, very subtle movement away from something. But it's when you can anesthetize that tendency, then you can see things clearly. So the equanimity needed for learning about phenomena and penetrating the nature of phenomena is dependent upon the stability and clarity of mind provided by samadhi. And samadhi is based upon mindfulness. And so what's mindfulness based upon? So mindfulness is based upon right effort. What's right effort based upon? Right effort's based upon sattha, or faith, or alternatively chanda, or enthusiasm and interest. Going to practice of meditation again. One of the things I hear far too often is, I'm not very good at meditating, or I can't do it very well. I'm not very, it's that phrase makes no sense to me. I don't recognize that as a meaningful statement. And the reason is that we are meditating in order to learn the skill of meditation. We are learning how to put forth right effort. That's the immediate goal of meditation. So in meditation, I would compare a bit to, let's say you're running a business and someone comes to apply for a job, and they're very confident, and they say that they know their stuff, and they've got an MBA from some big university in America, but you wouldn't put them in charge of anything important with you just on that basis. You give them a job to do and see how they handled it, because their intellectual knowledge is not necessarily going to translate itself into the nitty-gritty of daily life and work. So it's a similar idea, you know, we put our mind to the test, we give it a job, a simple job. Look, you're not asking very much, are you? Just, this is it, and it's not going to take very long to explain. When you breathe in, know that you're breathing in. When you breathe out, know that you're breathing out, okay? So I know your parents have spent a huge amounts of money putting you through MBA, but this is what you're going to do, you know? Can you do this? This is the job of meditation, okay? And what happens? Of course, difficult, isn't it? But what's really happening is you're learning. And what are you learning? You're learning that if you put in too much effort, you're too forceful, you get tense. Your breathing is not comfortable. You get a sense of constriction in your chest, or you get a headache. So this is this incredibly efficient feedback mechanism called body and mind. It's saying too much effort, not enough relaxation. If you go to the other extreme, and your mind is just wandering around in memories and imagination, or you start to get drowsy and fall asleep, this is your body and mind giving you some very important feedback. It's not saying you're hopeless at this, you can't do this properly. It's saying too much relaxation, not enough effort. It's your body and mind giving you information. It's teaching you. It's teaching you how to meditate. So don't get don't get depressed or discouraged. It's not the point, to find this magic bullet, this special technique where you can just bypass all mental defilements and take the shortcut into samadhi and bliss. That's not what meditation is about. Meditation is about learning how to put forth right effort. That's the foundation that you need. So the right effort are 4 right efforts. Learning how to relate to your meditation object, create a relationship with it in such a way that as yet unarisen defilements or hindrances don't arise. So this is the challenge. What kind of attitude do you need to your meditation object? The contentment, interest, enthusiasm. Obviously, if you can sustain those, and your mind is finding that your breath is more compelling than all the alternatives to it, it'll stay there. How do you deal with the hindrances that have arisen or do arise? How do you introduce into the mind the good qualities that are not there yet? And how do you take care of the ones that have arisen and develop them further, bring them to maturity? This is what we're doing when we're meditating. So I'm not trying to make my mind peaceful, and it just won't get peaceful. I want it to be still, and it's not still, and I want it to just stop, and it just won't stop. This is what I can say, this extreme of self-mortification. And it's just because we don't really understand what this is about. You say, well, what do you do when you're meditating? Just sit there wasting your time with your eyes. I had this argument with my grandmother. I got back from India so infused with meditation. I went go down and visit my grandparents, stay for a few days. It's evening time, and my grandma said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Going to my room." "What do you want to do in your room?" "I'm going to go meditate." "What do you want to do that for? You're sitting there and your eyes closed." And so, "Well, it's training on becoming peaceful." I think I even said that, make my mind peaceful. And he said, "Look, my mind's peaceful. I sit here and I knit. Not only do I find myself peaceful, but I have like sweaters and scarves and things. What do you have when you meditated? Nothing." So I had to admit, my grandmother, I certainly couldn't debate my grandmother at that period in my life. But if it's like, I'm going to meditate to make my mind peaceful, and then it's 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you think, I'm wasting my time. I could be doing so much more constructive things. I could be knitting a sweater or something, or working on my thesis or whatever, or doing something. But no, if you're looking at it correctly, I'm learning really important life skills. I'm learning how to find a balance between effort and relaxation. I'm learning how to sustain focus on an object. I'm learning how to identify and prevent the mind being pulled out of the present moment. I'm learning how to deal with negative mental states that cause so many problems throughout my life, whether it's agitation, depression, anxiety, and so on. I'm learning how to introduce into my mind wholesome mental states. I'm learning about them, how to take care of them, how to increase them. What other human activity is there? Has there ever been in the history of the human race in which you can learn these things by yourself, just by sitting with your eyes closed on the floor or on a chair even? This is the genius of the Buddha and his teachings. All these life skills that we can learn simply by putting ourselves to this task of, when you breathe in, you know you're breathing in. When you breathe out, you know you're breathing out. So why is it that obstacle arises? What feeds it? What starves it? How do I prevent it arising? How do I deal with it when it's arisen? Because these negative mental states, these hindrances, it's not that they just come up because you meditate, and that if you don't meditate you don't have to deal with. These are things that are coming up all the time in your life, and it's through meditation that you are exposing them, you're illuminating them, you're bringing them up in order to look at them. Another really important change that takes place right at the beginning of a meditation journey is you're reordering your whole perspective on your inner world, what I've been calling the real world. So for someone who doesn't meditate, then it's, today it started off really well, I just felt so good this morning, and then this happened and I got really upset, and then in the afternoon I just felt so depressed, and then this happened and I was really happy again. So this is the ups and downs of me and my life. But when we meditate, we introduce a whole new way of looking at our experience, don't we? So we have this standard, say the breath, and now it's not like I'm anxious or I'm agitated or I'm depressed. It's like while I was watching my breath, this wave of anxiety came through my mind. Or there was a bout of agitation. Or there was like a sinking of the mind, a dullness of the mind. So now you're being able to see mental qualities as mental qualities, thought as thought, memory as memory, imagination as imagination, without creating this owner of experience. So the owner comes afterwards, the experience comes first, and the owner is optional. It's not built into the way we are. It's a function, it's an expression of ignorance. And the more clearly you look, the less that sense of ownership arises. You're seeing mental factors, mental qualities in this flow of experience, this verb-like existence. And you're beginning to learn how to deal with these mental states that arise. You become intelligent with regards to them. And in daily life situation, not only are you able to govern your feelings, your emotions, more aware of how you are behaving and conducting yourself, but your understanding of other people is much enhanced because you're making yourself like the human guinea pig, okay? If you're looking at anger or jealousy or fear or anxiety, it's not your anger, your jealousy, you're looking at human anxiety, human fear, human greed, or whatever it might be. And although the particular triggers for your anger and anxiety and fear might be different from other people, the anger itself, the fear itself, the anxiety itself, this is a universal human condition. So the more that you understand yourself, your real world, the more you understand others. The more you understand others, then the more wisely you will behave towards them, and the more compassion you will feel. Again, this is something that just pops up. You're trying to do this. You're trying to take care of your mind in a way that defilements don't arise, finding ways of dealing with defilements that have arisen, finding ways of bringing wholesome Dhammas into your mind and caring, cherishing and promoting and developing those that have. And then you think, this is hard work. I'm so dedicated to this. I just so really want to do this. And yet, it's so hard. So what about all the people in the world who haven't even considered meditating, haven't ever looked at their own mind, haven't ever even known that there are skills that can be developed to train the mind? How can we expect anything else when these people act in harsh, cruel, selfish, narcissistic ways? Again, we're mapping out the conditions. Why do people behave the way they do? It's not there are bad, evil people. There are ignorant people who are just the prey, the puppets of the negative mental states of which they have no insight and no understanding. So now we start to find our mind levels out in this way. We say, instead of getting angry with people, how could somebody do something like that? How could they be so insensitive and selfish and cruel? And the mind changes and you think, wow, look what cruelty does to the human mind. Look what greed does to a human mind. The things that human beings will do when their minds are dominated by greed. the things that human beings will do, the extent to which they will hurt others because of the mental states that are enveloping their mind. So this is a natural way that the more wisdom we have, the clearer we see things, the more compassionate we become. These things are inseparable because we see that there's no actor behind. We're not letting people off the hook. We're not letting monsters get away with anything, but we're looking not to say who's to blame, but say what exactly is going on here and what can be done about it. Because demonizing people who do bad things doesn't help anybody at all. But finding ways of understanding the human mind such that we can prevent such things from happening in the future, that's really far more valuable. So we're learning, when we meditate, it's not a matter of you're a good meditator or you're a bad meditator, and oh yes, I got so peaceful today, so I'm getting better. I'm quite a good meditator these days, and that's not really the point. I mean, it's encouraging, isn't it, when you have some results? But one of the reasons people, I think, get very discouraged is because you have too high expectations. You think you should be able to make your mind completely still, or you should be blissed out, or you should have some special experience. But it's not about having special experiences, it's about understanding ordinary experience. That's where wisdom arises. And looking and learning and growing in this way. So if you think, I've been meditating for so many days or weeks or years now, and I still haven't got this, and I still haven't got that, I'm getting nowhere. First thing to remember is that the commentator in your mind, that's also part of it. That's an object to be aware of. It's not who you are either. Don't identify with that negative, cynical commentator who's saying that you're hopeless and you're never going to get anywhere with this meditation stuff. You're a fake. That's just a voice in your head. Why would you take that any more seriously than any other voice in your head? But if you're looking at your real world of your experience, if you're meditating regularly, observe a little bit more, a little bit kinder, a little bit more patient, a little bit more stable, a little bit more mindful. It's incremental. Little bit more appreciative of your parents and people who've helped you in your life. The eyes are a little bit more open to what this human life is all about. So it's like cleaning the windscreen. It's just things gradually. I can just. But it's not kind of really, for most people, it's not high drama, and there's some people who really, you've probably met people like this who say, my first meditation retreat, wow, I had this, and it was, it's incredible, and now 5 years have gone by, and I still haven't been able to experience that again, and I'm starting to think, maybe I'll never be able to. And some people, it's like 10 years even, 50. This kind of sad, nostalgic meditator, it's like the nostalgia for a meditation, a state of peace on my first meditation retreat, What a sad figure, so don't do that, be, what's going on right now? And appreciate these small incremental changes in the quality of your life, the quality of your relationship to the people around you, your love of goodness, your love of truth, your integrity, these down to earth basic kind of developments, rather than, I've never realized this or realized that, and feeling inadequate and hopeless. So the few reflections for you this evening. I'll have to offer you to take away and reflect on some more, and like to end my talk at this point.
Thank you, Thanajan. Thanajan, we will open the floor up to questions.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's do.
Brothers and sisters, if you have a question, please raise your hand and I will pass the microphone to you. A very rare opportunity to ask Thanajan Jayasaro questions in person after 4 years of pandemic.
Yes. Quick before the next pandemic. No, I didn't mean that.
Good evening, Ajahn and Jayasaro, venerables, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. My question is about, I guess you mentioned about the voice in your head, the cynical, self-deprecating voice. I experienced that a lot growing up, but to a certain extent, sometimes this voice can be one of wisdom as well, which gives me like a reality check. Whenever, I'm starting to delude myself and then there's this voice coming in, albeit being very harsh and rather, patronizing, it's telling me to come back to reality and, giving me like a dose of reality. So how can I transform that voice into one which is kinder? Because there's truth in what this perhaps wisdom or, it's trying to tell me, but sometimes I can't differentiate this voice from that of a self-deprecating, critical one. Thank you, Ajahn.
Well, I think that we could compare it with an external critic, say someone in your family or someone who has some influence over your life, who can be very harsh to you, but also can say some useful things. And so whether it's a human being or a voice, it's the same thing. You're aware of this as it's information. It's advice, and it could be well-intentioned or ill-intentioned and so on. But having that clarity of mind to be able to take what's useful and leave what's not, that's just a skill to develop. With regard to the internal voice, I think that as long as there's one part of you actually wants that to carry on, that you've seen some value in it, then it will always be there because you want it to be there. And I think that's true of any kind of chronic defilement of any kind. Why have I been plagued with it? Because one part of you still wants it to be there. So in terms of the changing the quality of the voice and the advice, then loving kindness meditation, of course, is very, very helpful with this. Again, for people who, I think in the West, or in Western culture, or people influenced by Western culture, then a major obstacle in loving kindness meditation is this self-aversion. It seemed to be such a common phenomena in Western cultures, particularly for a number of reasons. So when monks of the Ajahn Chah tradition first went to UK and America, and they were saying that the traditional way of teaching loving kindness, metta, doesn't work so well, because the idea is you start off with the easy and gradually work towards what's difficult. So in the Visuddhimagga, or in the text, you start off with metta for yourself, and then you expand it to those you love and respect, and then to neutral, and then to eventually to enemies or people you have difficulty with. And so many Western meditators were saying, I just find it impossible to feel metta for myself. And so there were various skillful means developed, like Ajahn Brahmavamsa, for instance, was, I think, the first one to recommend starting off with kittens or puppies or something. So it's the idea you start off with something that is easy for you to feel positive, and then gradually work from that. And where you are on that, it might be halfway along the way to be enemy, or it might be even harder than for an enemy. But I recently came up with my own techniques. I'm going to share this with you this evening. And I was considering that even people who claim to have so much self-aversion and self-hatred and whatever, that doesn't apply to their bodies, does it? So I'm saying, start off with your body. Say, may my eyes be well. Yeah. I have no cataracts. May I see clearly, not long-sighted, not short-sighted. Who could say they can't do that, you know? May my ears be well. May I never go deaf, hard of hearing, you know? May my nose be well. May I breathe in without problems, and breathe out without problems with my sinuses. May my teeth be well. May I be free from toothache and pains and root canal problems. And so my idea is that you start off with, this is the easy thing for anybody, no matter what opinion you have about yourself and your perceptions of yourself. I think everyone actually has quite a deep bank of goodwill towards the individual parts of their body. May my lungs be well. May my spleen be well. If you're a bit old, you say, may my prostate gland be well. So, yeah, so, and then from there's this kind of, I don't know, like a kind of osmosis. It starts to influence how you feel about yourself, because there's no clear distinction, is there, between the body and the mind. And you just become accustomed to this idea of wishing your body well, and it starts to affect your mind as well. So that's one thing to do. But I was talking with a lady. This is a Thai lady living overseas, and she was so down, and she'd given up a quite well-paid job to look after her aging mother, and so she felt she made like a really big sacrifice to do that, gave up so much of what gave her pleasure and joy in her life for her mother. What was difficult was that her mother showed no appreciation at all, and nothing she did was right. Always criticizing, everything was wrong, and running her daughter down and using coarse language. And so she said, what can I do? I just feel so unappreciated, and I feel I've given up so much, and this is my reward. And so I said, next time your mum says something nasty to you, you say, ooh, that Mom, that hurt. But never mind, I can take it. Have you got something stronger than that? Give it to me right now. I'm ready. Whether you give it to me or give it to somebody else, I'm your daughter, I can take it. You just go ahead. So this is called emotional judo, okay? It's like, so rather than just pushing this away, this is a way to give feedback to an elder, isn't it? And just bring out the humor of the situation and say, yeah, you must be. So somebody is behaving in that way. They must have so much physical or emotional pain, and if you really want to help them, and help them to free themselves of that. And say, yeah, give it to me. What's the worst thing you could possibly think of? Give it to me right now. I'm ready for it. Yes, so this is like when you can be creative in Dhamma practice, There are just this important phrase. It's like Dhammanu Dhamma Patipata, which means practicing Dhamma in harmony, constant with the Dhamma, which means you have to be really conversant, really fluent in the main principles of Dhamma. And then you can customize practices or come up with things that you don't find in any book, but you can be confident because they are in line with, they are in accordance with the main principles. So I meet people who say to me, I'm doing this in my meditation, and I can free my mind of the hindrances, and my mind has developed samadhi. Is it okay? It's like it's not in the books. So, well, yeah, I mean the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? I mean, if this is working for you, it doesn't have to be in the books. Are the unwholesome dhammas decreasing, wholesome dhammas increasing? Are the hindrances disappearing? Are the enlightenment factors appearing? So you have these criteria and these that you can apply to your experience, and you can take practices and you can work with them and find something that's really works for you. If you do have doubts, and when you speak with a monk or a teacher, then you can check with them, but don't simply take the fact that something's not in a book to mean that it's not a kind of an authentic practice.
Thank you very much, Ajahn. That was very helpful.
Good.
Ajahn, thank you for the sharing. It's truly a blessing with your presence here today. I was reflecting just now when Ajahn shared that even very simple things, the conditions, the experience of every day are teaching us. The question is, are we ready for learning? So I have this question and these doubts on the learning spirit. So in today's world, as the internet, the access to informations, even we have Sunday service every day, every week here at the center. As we come for the learning, so after many years of the practice, just recently I suddenly felt that I don't feel like I'm learning much anymore. I feel like with the experience I have, there are a lot of things, the experience, sometimes that we have the thoughts that, oh, I have learned that, I have learned this. As even some juniors come to us, ask for our experience as we share, there is also these doubts. Am I am I in the right position to share my experience as well? So there is these doubts in me, and I would like to seek Ajahns advice on this learning attitude and the spirit. Yeah.
Well, I would say just from the question, you've already shown that you've developed a humble heart and a questioning mind. So those two qualities are already very admirable. I have a couple of similes that may help with this kind of doubt. The first is comparison between rain and fog. So if you go out in the rain, you take a few steps and you're aware you're getting wet, no question. But you can go out in the fog. I don't know if you really get fog here. And do you get fog? No, you know what fog is, okay. So if you ever lived in a foggy place, you can go out and walk through the fog. And it's only when you get home and you take off, everything's so damp and wet, and you didn't even realize while you were walking. And so the Dhamma practice is sort of like this. It's like Israeli, it's like high drama, like I was saying just now. It's just this steady absorption of the Dhamma. And it's not like, oh wow, everything's changed and it's not something that you can put your finger on. Or it's a little bit like the hour hand of a clock. You look at it and you can't see it moving, but you look again at some time and there has been some movement. And sometimes other people notice things that you can't notice yourself. People notice changes in you that for you has just been so incremental you didn't notice. So it's a matter of faith in the teachings, and that you just keep plugging away and something is happening. And this takes me to my second simile. Let's say there's a mountain and you're going to dig a tunnel. So like a 1 kilometer mountain. Now what happens as you keep digging that tunnel? It doesn't get brighter, it gets darker. And it gets darker, and you can get to like 999 meters, and you're in complete darkness, and you're thinking, I've really done. And then this is, you keep going, and suddenly you've come out the other side of the mountain. You look back and you see, whoa, what a long tunnel I've done. But it's not like moment by moment you can necessarily see this. And there are periods, to be frank, which are more like just consolidating things. It's not like Stairway to Heaven, it's more like Snakes and Ladders. And there are periods where it's just, you're just consolidating, and then you reach a certain point, and then there's another leap forward. It's not like a consistent, measurable progress, I would say. Keep going, basically.
Thank you, Ajahn.
There's somebody here.
Ajahn, thank you very much for the explanation on smart and stupid person. And the question is about sati. In being smart or being stupid, many times we have a bit of both. And when a defilement is done in a moment of madness, we suffer the consequence and hold on and cling to it. And basically, that is one part of the problem. The other part is the judgmental view of society in terms of society's perspective in looking at the person, the personality, and the action or misdeed. So we suffer both ways. Shame and guilt, as what Ajahn had clearly explained, becomes the conflict. So in this case, when there is an act of madness done ignorantly, what is the best advice towards dealing with it, both externally as a surrounding or a community, and internally as an individual?
Meaning when we are the person who's behaved in that way, or looking at others?
We ourselves, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe just returning and this, the guilt, I would say, would be included in the fourth hindrance of kukucha. There's utacha and kukucha, yeah? And guilt is kukucha. So it's a hindrance, it's a defilement. Shame is a wholesome Dhamma. So that's a fundamental distinction between them. One is something to be cultivated and one is something to be abandoned. So if we're feeling guilty, then you know you're already on the wrong track, you know, because you've created this kind of owner and someone who is bad and someone who's this kind of fixed identity. So in terms of how we look at others, the same idea, you know, you have an object, you know, like a cup, and from the time that cup is produced until it breaks or it comes to its end, it's a cup. But a human being is just a vessel, you know, and this is flow. And someone who's done something really awful in the past, that's not defining them for the rest of their life. It's influencing them and influencing their future in certain ways and influencing their standing in society and so on and so forth. But it's not like they are forever after that kind of person, or that's not, you know, their brand or their defining feature. And so, you know, with ourselves, you know, that ability to fully accept, acknowledge fault, and yet to see that was the result of certain causes and conditions, and the best thing that I can do from now is to make sure that the causes and conditions for that to happen in the future will not appear. It's not just a matter of sort of making in a moment of remorse, making this kind of vow, I'll never do that again, because you can't do that. That's dishonest, because if those same mental factors are there and you've not dealt with them, you have the same kind of triggers or pressures or temptations, you'll act that way. You may not feel like it right now because you're not in that situation. But genuine remorse has to be expressed in terms of, you know, working to abandon the causes and conditions that led to that in the first place, and systematically and sincerely cultivating the antidotes and the good qualities that will protect you against that in the future. So I think this is such a healthy way of and it's not a kind of a cop-out. It's still taking full responsibility, but in a much wiser and helpful way, I think.
Thank you very much, Ajahn.
Okay. There was somebody, did you want to ask something? Yeah. I'm okay if somebody... Yes, okay. Let's do it like this. This is the last formal question, then everyone can say goodbye. Everyone wants to go home. If you want to stay and ask something else, we'll just do it kind of more informally. How about that? Okay.
All right, Ajahn, I'll just ask a very quick question. So it's about meditation. So just now I heard that if my mind thinks a lot, it means I'm not putting enough effort. but I feel that I put too much and make myself very tense up. So is there any advice from Tan Ajahn?
No, it's the right effort. It's like, don't assume effort means like willpower. You know, there's different ways of applying effort. So with thinking, my recommendation for effort is I think like another analogy. Okay, so there are some children in the dark being naughty, and the parent turns the light on, stands there, and say, "Okay, carry on." You know, what did the child do? It doesn't carry on. It's the parent standing there watching. So the analogy here is when the mind's really racing along, you just stand there, okay, carry on. Let me watch and see what you're going to think about. And so it's a very it's subtle way of dealing. So it's not sort of reacting against thinking or making thinking into some kind of an enemy, but it's saying, yeah. And that effort to be present to thinking reduces or eliminates thinking almost immediately. If that doesn't work, another way is to say, okay, you're really going to think right now? You can think. I have one condition. Think in slow motion. Yeah. So you're thinking, after this, I will go and buy a pizza or something like that. So you're allowing it, you're giving that little bit, but that effort, so your effort here is to slow down the thinking rather than to stop the thinking. So effort doesn't just mean like willpower and sort of fighting against something, because that doesn't work very well. Mm.
Thank you, Tan Ajahn.
Okay.
Friends, shall we say a resounding sadhu to Tan Ajahn? Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.